headlines tonight. A group of directors of South Korean firms operating at the Inter-Korean Factory Complex meets with North Korean officials. We have the latest on what was discussed in the meeting. The ruling and opposition parties have quite the opposite evaluation of yesterday's three-way meeting with the president, especially when it comes to economy-related issues. Plus, with nearly all the votes counted in Israel, incumbent Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's Likud Party has won a victory, giving him a likely fourth term in office. We have these stories and more coming right up. Stay with us. It's 6 in the evening on Wednesday, March 18th here in Seoul. You're watching Early Edition at 6. I'm Laah Hyun-kyung.
And I'm Daniel Choy. Thank you for joining us. South Korean military sources say Seoul and Washington will likely discuss next month the controversial issue of the THAAD missile defense system's deployment to South Korea.
Well, for those who haven't been following this news closely, our Kim Hyun-bin explains why this is a subject of great debate.
The U.S. missile defense system known as THAAD is built to intercept incoming tactical and ballistic missiles at a range of up to 200 kilometers. The system uses kinetic energy with a hit-to-kill method that in turn creates an upper-tier defense shield. It's also equipped with a sophisticated radar system that has a range of up to 2,000 kilometers. This is widely considered to be the reason why Beijing is so strongly against its potential deployment to the Korean peninsula, as a radar will be able to cover Beijing and its surrounding areas. However, the U.S. says THAAD will enhance South Korea's ability to deal with Pyongyang's nuclear and ballistic missile threats, as well as enhancing surveillance on the communist regime. But critics see the possible deployment as Washington's attempt to reel in its Asian ally into its missile defense program. South Korea has acknowledged the battery would enhance its national security, but says it has no plans to buy the multi-billion-dollar system. Military sources say the issue will likely be addressed at the South Korea-U.S. biannual integrated defense dialogue set for mid-April in Washington. The sources add that South Korea's Deputy Minister for National Defense Policy, Ryu Jae-sung, and U.S. Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for East Asia, David Helvey, will represent the two sides at next month's meeting. South Korea has stressed on numerous occasions that it's developing its own low-tier missile defense system to protect the country against the North's missile threats. The so-called Korea Air Missile Defense and kill chain systems are set to be implemented by 2023. Kim Hyun-bin, Arirang News.
Now, another seemingly uncomfortable subject between the U.S. and China is the China-led Asia Infrastructure Investment Bank. At a regular press briefing on Tuesday, U.S. State Department spokesperson Jen Psaki said the decision on whether to join the AIIB rests squarely with each sovereign country, including South Korea. But Psaki added that the multilateral institution should closely follow the high standards established at the World Bank and other regional development banks as well. Britain announced last week that it would join the bank, becoming the first Western country to do so, followed by France, Germany, and Italy. Now, a U.S. official has acknowledged that there was a response to the cyber attack on Sony Pictures in November, though he didn't identify the responsible party. Representative Michael McCall, the chair of the U.S. House Homeland Security Committee, said, quote, "There were some cyber responses to North Korea." He said an internet blackout in North Korea in December was one of the responses. He did not say whether the U.S. was behind it or not, though there had been speculation that the U.S. may have been behind the outage. Washington accuses Pyongyang of disrupting computers at Sony Pictures Entertainment and leaking internal content, while North Korea denies any involvement.
A group of South Korean businessmen with factories at the Kaesong Industrial Complex made a day trip to Kaesong for talks with North Korean officials. The visit comes after Pyongyang unilaterally demanded a wage hike for its workers at the complex and refused to discuss the matter with the South Korean government. Our Hwang Sung-hee reports.
Although North Korea rejected a petition from the South Korean companies, the South Korean businessmen say Wednesday's talks in Kaesong were quite productive.
We delivered vivid stories from the company's perspective, at least 10 times more than what was written on a one-page petition.
The rare day trip comes after North Korea demanded a unilateral wage hike of around 5% and a revision of regulations last month. South Korea says the issue must be settled through inter-Korean dialogue.
The government thinks it's appropriate for North Korea to come to talks as soon as possible to resolve issues regarding the management and improvement of the Kaesong complex through government-level talks.
With North Korea refusing the offer, 14 South Korean businessmen met with Park Chul-soo, the North Korean official who oversees the management of the business park, to urge Pyongyang to engage in talks.
We asked North Korea to consider the fact that many companies have nightmares about the suspension in 2013, and that it should engage in government-level talks swiftly.
The businessmen described Wednesday's talks as amicable, adding they will hold similar meetings in the future. The joint business park, where some 53,000 North Koreans work at 125 South Korean factories, is the last remaining link of inter-Korean economic cooperation. The South Korean government, companies, and experts all say that another shutdown of the business park will not be in North Korea's interest. However, many are keeping an eye on a planned anti-Pyongyang leaflet launch next week and whether it will influence business operations at the Kaesong Industrial Complex. 황상희, Arirang News, Paju.
To Korea's newly appointed long arms of the law, President Park Geun-hye says people who threaten national security and identity should not go unchecked. At a ceremony to appoint new police officers on Wednesday, President Park highlighted the growing importance of the police's role in maintaining security, saying there are still regional differences in Korea's sense of safety. The president's remarks follow a recent knife attack on U.S. Ambassador Mark Lippard in broad daylight, as well as a series of shooting incidents that roused Koreans about the degree of safety in the country. Referring to her economic innovation and structural reform drive, President Park asked the soon-to-be rookie officers to lead efforts to create a transparent and safe Korea, which she said was a requirement for reviving the economy. The leaders of Korea's rival political camps came away with very different views about their meeting with President Park Geun-hye on Tuesday, particularly on the subject of reviving the economy. The ruling Likud Party and the presidential office were on the defensive after main opposition leader Moon Jae-in criticized the president for a failure to improve the economy. Our Park Ji-won tells us more.
Ruling Likud Party Chairman Kim Moo-sung said Wednesday that Tuesday's trilateral talks with the president and main opposition party leader provided the rival parties with a good opportunity to see that bipartisan efforts are necessary in order to revive the economy. Kim added that both parties need to focus on pending bills that could benefit the economy. He also criticized main opposition party leader Moon Jae-in for characterizing the Park administration's economic policies as a failure during Tuesday's meeting.
I think Moon's remarks that the economy is a failure and facing a total crisis could lower economic players' confidence at a time when the nation's economy is taking a positive turn.
Moon, the chairman of the main opposition New Politics Alliance for Democracy Party, apparently doesn't agree with Kim's assessment of the current economic situation. He said Wednesday that there is a huge gap in the way the economy is assessed and in devising measures to counter the crisis.
We've realized once again that there is a huge difference in perspectives. The current administration doesn't have any critical minds or lacks measures for addressing issues like normalizing the corporate tax rate, housing rental and jeonse costs, and the country's mounting household debt.
The presidential office also defended itself against Moon's remarks. It said that the economy has seen steady growth since 2012, with a growth rate of 3.3% last year, up from 2.3% in 2012. The presidential office added that it takes time for the rise in the growth rate to be felt by the general public and vowed to focus on consolidating the nation's economic recovery. Presidential office spokesman Min Kyung-wook expressed the hope that the trilateral talks will generate momentum for parliamentary cooperation in reviving the economy. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
Business partners face a one-day entry ban. 77.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with experts on the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best. With Laah Hyun-kyung and Daniel Choy.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
Arirang News.
On Early Edition at 6.
The so-called real unemployment rate is a record that's been kept since last year. It's different from the general unemployment rate, which rose significantly compared to last month and the year before. Our Shin Se-min has the details.
The nation's unemployment rate hit a 5-year high in February of 4.6%, a jump from 3.8% from January and 0.1 percentage point higher than the year before. Statistics Korea said Wednesday that the high jobless figure comes on the back of seasonal factors. February is when students in Korea graduate, pushing the unemployment rate up that month. In addition, Korea's real unemployment rate in February hit a record high of 12.5% since the data collection began last May. That's 3 times as high as the official jobless rate. The real unemployment rate includes day laborers, people who are looking for a job, those who are underemployed, and those who have given up looking for a job. The figure is much broader than the official unemployment rate, which only accounts for the number of people who want jobs but have failed to get one. Despite the rise in the unemployment rate, the number of jobs created increased as well. Over 370,000 new jobs were created last month compared to the year before. The number of employed people topped some 25.2 million last month, also thanks to seasonal factors, as major local companies hold the first of 2 annual recruiting rounds during that time of the year.
Graduation season has 2 major effects on the job market. Some graduates may be hired right off the bat, while others may remain jobless. So this is the reason behind the surge in both the jobless and unemployment rates last month.
The Statistics Office also said more young people and people in their 50s found jobs last month, boosting the employment rate. Shin Se-min, Arirang News.
Speaking of jobs, Korea is quite well known for having one of the highest gender wage gaps among advanced countries, and there's even more data supporting this. Business rating agency CEO Score's recent survey on Korea's top 290 companies show that men earn $23,000 more a year than women. The average annual salary for men last year was $64,000, while women earned $41,000. The gender wage gap was the widest in the banking sector, where the difference was $40 or $40,000. The agency said the reason is mainly because men stay with their job longer than women, and also because women tend to stay longer in lower positions. Well, it's not just diplomatic relations between Seoul and Tokyo that have hit new lows in recent years. Trade between the two countries has also been on the decline for the past 3 years. Experts say this trend will continue for the time being, with the yen likely to stay weak. Kim Min-ji has the story.
Korea's trade with Japan has been heading downhill. According to the Korea International Trade Association, bilateral trade between the two countries came to about $86 billion last year, down 9.2% from a year earlier. Korea's exports to Japan slumped about 7% to $32 billion, while imports fell more than 10% to almost $54 billion. This marks the 3rd straight year that the bilateral trade volume has dropped after peaking in 2011. Preliminary data shows that trade between the two countries also fell almost 14% in the first 2 months of this year to about $10 billion. The decline is mainly being attributed to the weak yen.
The falling value of the Japanese yen has made Korean products less competitive in terms of price in Japan, and that's resulted in lower demand. Japan has also increased production overseas, so imports out of Japan have seen a decline.
Experts forecast the downward trend to continue as Japan's monetary stimulus programs will keep the value of the yen down. Kim Min-ji, Arirang News.
The U.S. Federal Reserve is expected to clarify the timing for its first interest rate hike on Wednesday, local time. The U.S. is now the only country potentially going against the trend of global monetary easing. For more on the market speculation and its impact on the Korean economy, here's our Hwang Ji-hye.
Investors broadly forecast that the U.S. Federal Reserve will signal on a rate rise in June by dropping the word patient from its official policy statement set to be released on Wednesday local time. Improving jobs data is stoking such expectations.
There's been a very clear trend towards improvement. We saw that in the February payrolls that we received recently. So I think the odds are that they will remove patient from the statement, sort of indicating that they're within a couple of meetings of that initial rate hike.
But the surging U.S. dollar that came on the back of such forecasts and the European Central Bank printing more euros is clouding the timing of a rate rise. The soaring greenback erodes the price competitiveness of U.S. exporters in the global market and could hurt the pace of recovery. The Fed's next move also comes in an environment of sluggish global demand and slowing growth, where more than 20 central banks across the globe have eased policy this year to revive ailing economies. And Korea is no exception.
The Fed's decision on its key rate has largely affected Korea's key rate. But now Korea's interest rate is more affected by monetary policies in regions other than the U.S.
There are concerns, though, of a massive capital outflow from Korea in the face of the Fed's possible rate hike and a record low key rate. The good news is that Korea is now less vulnerable to such risks.
Korea continues to post a current account surplus, and this leads to increasing foreign exchange reserves. That will help Korea absorb shocks coming from capital outflows.
The Bank of Korea governor, however, has cautioned against too much optimism, saying the central bank will closely monitor risks related to capital outflows. Hwang Ji-hye, Arirang News.
In Israel, they are counting the votes. It's almost done after millions there cast their ballots in a parliamentary election on Tuesday. Although the official results are not out yet, sitting Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has claimed victory for his Likud Party and is now ready to form a new government. Our Kwon So-hwa has this report.
A clear but surprising win. Sitting Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's right-wing Likud Party claimed victory in Tuesday's parliamentary elections.
Against all odds, a great victory for Likud.
Israeli media reported that with nearly all of the votes counted on Wednesday morning local time, Netanyahu's party won at least 29 seats out of 120 in the Knesset, Israel's parliament. The party's main rival, the center-left Zionist Union, led by Isaac Herzog, won 24 seats. The Likud Party's victory came as a surprise as pre-election polls on Friday showed the opposition party in the lead, and Tuesday's exit polls had the two parties tied. Once the results are confirmed, Netanyahu will embark on forming new coalition government with other smaller parties, a process that could be months in the making.
I spoke tonight with all party leaders in the national camp, and I asked them to join me and form a government without delay. Reality does not take a break. Israeli citizens expect us to quickly form a responsible leadership that will work for them, and this is what we'll do.
The key issues in the race were less focused on security issues than they were in the past, and more on domestic issues related to the soaring cost of living and housing prices. The election results could give Netanyahu a fourth term, making him Israel's longest-serving prime minister. Kwon So-hwa, Arirang News.
Moving on to the art realm, works by a famous German artist known for emotionally powerful images are on display here in Seoul. People in the Korean art community say this is a very rare opportunity to see the artist's works. Our Im Yoon-hee takes us to this very moving exhibition.
A mother, desperate to feed and fend for her children in a country ravaged by war. The image is one of over 50 original works by the 20th century German painter, printmaker, and sculptor Käthe Kollwitz that are being shown at the Seoul Museum of Art. But inside these charcoal sketches, inside the shadows, are hungry children, traumatized mothers, the victims of poverty in World War I, people that artist Kollwitz just couldn't ignore.
After the war, the remaining families had a very hard time. There was no relief in sight, no counselling, and no one to defend them. This artist chose to bring attention to them.
The exhibition is divided into two parts. One, dedicated to the squalid lives of members of the working class prior to 1914, while the latter part shows works that illustrate the living hell experienced by people in Germany in the aftermath of World War I. Kollwitz was a well-recognized and respected artist in the art community, but she went beyond an artist and contributed to humanity, bringing awareness to those left in the shadows of this world. Im Yoon-hee, Arirang News.
And now on to some health news. An endoscopy is a common procedure during a health checkup in Korea, but it can only detect certain conditions, and cancer is not one of them.
Well, now there is new hope as local researchers have developed a groundbreaking optical technology that can spot abnormalities related to cancer at an early stage of development. Our Son Jung-in has more.
A patient who has been complaining of discomfort in his stomach is undergoing a gastroscopy when doctors spot a scar on the stomach wall. With an endoscopic examination like this, doctors can detect imperfections such as lumps or scratches. But they cannot spot cancer cells because of the way light scatters, blocking their view. However, a team of local researchers whose work was published in the journal Nature Photonics earlier this month has developed a high-resolution optical microscope that can detect abnormalities related to cancer at the cellular level. The device assigns different values to light waves as they're emitted from various angles and collects the information.
We've developed a microscope that can obtain information from light as it goes in and out of the tissue.
The optical device enables doctors to see 1 millimeter into the skin with a resolution 10 times clearer than existing microscopes, helping them to detect cancer at an earlier stage of development than what is currently possible.
This new technology will overcome the shortcomings of the existing endoscopy. It could give us a way to detect cancer earlier by observing changes in human deep tissue at the nucleus level.
The researchers expect their new optical microscope to be put into practice within 5 years after being fully developed for the early detection of cancer. Son Jung-in, Arirang News.
Well, spring showers are expected across the nation today.
Well, we've had a few light scatter showers here in Seoul, but I hear it's raining quite heavily in the southern provinces. For more, let's go to our Michelle Park at the Weather Center. Michelle.
Good evening, guys. As you mentioned, Hyun-kyung, we've begun to get some drops in here in Seoul while it's been pouring buckets in the southern regions. Now, there's also good wind blowing in some parts of the country, making it feel chillier. Now, we're expecting 60 millimeters of rain on Jeju Island and the southern coast. Roughly 5 millimeters is expected in Seoul, while the rest of the nation can expect up to 30 millimeters. Now, the rain will clear up tonight here in the capital regions, whereas the southern provinces can expect it up to early tomorrow morning. But hopefully, the rain will clear away the dust and give us some relief from the dry weather that we've been having. Now, after the rain, temperatures in the south will drop down into the high teens from the 20s in the southern regions, while Seoul will stay the same or even higher throughout the rest of this week. Now let's have a look at the readings for tomorrow. So we'll start off the Thursday morning at 9 degrees and gets up to 19 in the afternoon, while Daegu and Busan will hit up to 17 degrees. Moving over to other regions, Jeju Island gets up to 16, Dokdo hits to 12, while Mount Kumgang drops down to 9 degrees. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and I hope you have a wonderful evening.
Thanks, Michelle. That's a wrap for us. Have a good start to your day or a safe drive home, depending on where you're tuning in from. This has been Daniel Choy.
And I'm Laah Hyun-kyung. See you again at the same time tomorrow. Goodbye for now.